I've played a lot of roles in life. I've met a lot of men. I've done some things I'd like to think I wouldn't do again. And though I'm young, I'm old enough to know someday I'll die, and to think about what lies beyond, and besides whom I would lie. So bury me with soldiers, please, though much maligned they be. Yes, bury me with soldiers, for I miss their company. We will not soon see their like again, we've had our fill of war. But bury me with men like them, till someone else does more.
My family has always been greatly affiliated with the military. It all started with my sixth great-grandfather, Peter Looney. He fought in the French and Indian War as a sergeant under Captain Smith and appointed to one of the western defenses on the upper Roanoke near present-day Lafayette, Virginia. He was wounded and captured by the Indians when the fort surrendered on June 25, 1756. Then his son, my fifth great-grandfather, Peter Granser Luna, fought in the Revolutionary War. My grandfather, Colonel William Christopher, fought in many wars as well and received numerous medals and honors, including the Bronze Star. He entered the Army in 1952 and served in the Korean War from 1953 to 1954, where he earned the Korean Service Medal and the United Nations Korean Service Medal. He was then stationed in Germany from 1960 to 1964 and to the Dominican Republic for a year. He then served 2 years in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, where he received the Vietnam Service Medal, the Republic of Vietnam Armed Forces Medal, and the Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal. He retired after 20 years of active service and then served as the Executive Director of the National Guard Association for 20 more years, where he received the Armed Forces Reserve National Guard Medal. He also earned the Army Commendation Medal, awarded for sustained acts of heroism, and the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal.
My great-grandfather fought in World War II. His name was Cleo Richards, and he was inducted into the United States Army on October 16th of 1942 in Lubbock, Texas. He was assigned to the 96th Signal Corps as a radio operator. From there, he would travel to train in Oklahoma, Oregon, Washington, California, and Hawaii. During this time, he learned Morse code and attended radio operator school. While in Hawaii, they received their combat orders and were not told the destination until they were 3 days at sea. They were headed for the Philippine Islands. This is how my papa described it. On October 20th of 1944, we invaded Leyte Islands, which was part of the Philippine Islands. The Navy and Air Force bombarded the shore of the island for 3 days prior to landing. The purpose was to drive the Japs inland so we could land with the minimum number of casualties. After 3 days, troops began to land. In order to get from the ship to the landing boat, we had to go down a rope ladder. It was about 25 to 30 feet to the landing boat, but it seemed like 100 yards. Once the landing boat was loaded, we headed for the shore. It was a gruesome sight and a weird feeling. Dead Japs were scattered around as a result of the shelling of the area prior to our landing. My job was to go inland 200 to 300 yards and find a spot that would be adequate to set up a command post. I was on duty all that day, all night, and until about noon the next day. When I was finally relieved, I went to a nearby tree, sat down, leaned up against the trunk, and tried to pull myself together and relax. That didn't last long because all of a sudden a very large shell landed right in the middle of our command post. It was so powerful it blew a hole in the ground large enough to drive a semi-truck into. The explosion sent chunks of shrapnel in every direction. Shrapnel had gotten lodged into my papa's face, and they later removed it and gave it to him as a souvenir. After this occurred, he was returned to the States and shortly thereafter received an honorable discharge. My papa received many medals and ribbons, such as the Armed Force Expeditionary Medal, the Commendation Medal, and a Purple Heart. My papa always used to tell us, freedom is not free, it comes with a price.
My great-grandfather was also a decorated member of the military during World War II. His decorations and citations include the EAME Campaign Medal with 3 Bronze Stars, a Good Conduct Medal, and 4 Overseas Service Bars. Arthur Perry McGowan was drafted on February 12, 1943 at 20 years old. He attended training in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and was sent to North Africa on July 7, 1943. Upon arriving in Africa, most soldiers were put into divisions. This was not the case for my pappy, however. He and another soldier were picked up one day by civilians and taken to a camp. On the way, he was told to keep his eyes open and his mouth shut. Later on, he found out that he had been selected for placement in the Office of Strategic Services, which was a wartime CIA operation. Because of this, Pappy was never put on the front lines. Instead, he performed intelligence work, demolition work, and supplied and aided underground Allied groups. His primary job was to supply. This means that he dressed agents like Germans to go behind enemy lines. He and others would ransack abandoned houses looking for items such as German-made wallets, eyeglasses, and watches. Items like these were vital because everything an agent had on needed to be believable. While in the military, he was stationed in Africa, France, and Germany. Once the war ended, Pappy was flown from Germany to France, shipped to Boston, processed at OSS headquarters in Washington, D.C., and returned home to his wife and 2-year-old daughter, my grandmother, in Beaumont, Texas, on October 24, 1945, 2 years, 8 months, and 12 days after he was drafted.
Like Aubrey and Leanne, my great-grandfather was also in World War II, and although I'm not sure if he received any medals, he did perform a courageous act to help out his whole ship. My great-grandpa, Edward Arnold, or Papa as I knew him, enlisted in the Navy in 1943 at the age of 35 after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Although he had no military experience, he was enlisted as an officer because of his extensive mechanical knowledge and was given the title Chief Machinist's Mate. He was sent to Maine and served as second in command in the engine room of the USS Tolman. They began their journey to the beaches of Okinawa, where they encountered hostile Japanese torpedo boats and kamikazes, causing them to have an open-fire battle. They barely got away after sinking 2 Japanese ships and thought they were finally safe until their ship ran aground. When this happened, the main axle that ran throughout the whole ship was damaged and caused the ship to continuously shake violently. They couldn't make it back to the U.S. waters under these conditions, and the chief machinist was unable to fix it due to having temporary insanity from the voyage. My papa now had to step up as first command mechanic and was able to fix the axle just enough to allow them to make it home. If it weren't for my great-grandpa, the whole ship would have been stuck in Japanese waters and may have been destroyed.
Hi, my name is Carrie Kelly, and this first picture is of my grandmother, Mary Jean Keene Kelly. And I found copies of both her dad, Curtis Sterling Keene, and her grandfather, Frank Curtis Keene's World War I draft registration cards from 1917 to 1918 in my research, but neither of them actually served in World War I. Next are pictures of my papa, who was in the Navy, and these pictures were taken in 1937 to 1938 in Washington, D.C., Hawaii, and Savannah, Georgia. His name is Charlie Ray Nowlin, and he's my mom's dad, and he was born in 1914 and died in 1990. While he was in the Navy, he did radar, and but he got out right before Pearl Harbor happened, but he knew the capabilities of the Navy's radar system, so he always believed that it was no accident, Pearl Harbor, and that FDR forced us into World War II, and he did not like him. But he did not serve in World War II because his draft number was too high, and he just married my grandmother. Also, my granddaddy, James Herschel Kelly, and my dad, James Russell Kelly, both served in the Texas Army National Guard. My dad was deployed twice, first in 1991 to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio for 6 months, and then in 1997 to Bosnia and Germany for a year. As a result, I am a Desert Storm baby, which is pretty cool. And now you know Group 5's family military history. The end.